Welcome to our today's lesson. It's on Form 1 work, Introduction to Chemistry, Lesson 2, by Teacher Mercy. The topic of our today's lesson is types of flames produced by a Bunsen burner. And I want to begin by defining a flame, whereby a flame is a mass of burning gases. In our previous lesson, we talked about the definition of chemistry and where chemistry is usually studied, the special room which we called the laboratory. And we said that in the laboratory, we have the chemicals and apparatus which are used in the study of chemistry stored. Then we also said that the laboratory is a special room where practical subjects such as chemistry, biology, and physics are studied. The reason these subjects are studied in the laboratory is because they are practical subjects. They require a lot of experimentation, and therefore, those experiments are normally performed in that special room which we called the laboratory. Now, we talked about the types of apparatus which are found in the laboratory. Apparatus for measuring volumes of liquids. We talked about apparatus for measuring mass of solids, apparatus for measuring time, apparatus for measuring temperature, and finally we talked about apparatus for measuring for heating. Apparatus for heating. Now we talked about several examples which include the Bunsen burner, the main one. We have the candle. We talked about a gas stove. We talked about an electric heater, and so on and so forth. We are interested in the Bunsen burner because it's the main apparatus which is used for heating in the laboratory. We talked about the Bunsen burner. We introduced it in that lesson, and we talked about some different parts of the Bunsen burner, including the main parts. And today, I want us to talk about the types of flames produced by a Bunsen burner. There are two types of flames produced by the Bunsen burner, depending on the amount of air entering the air hole. The two types of flames are the luminous and the non-luminous flames. Now, let's start by talking about the luminous flame. The luminous flame is produced when the air hole of the Bunsen burner is closed. It is bright yellow, large, and wavy. And it has 4 zones. Now we can have a look at the diagram of the luminous flame shown. I hope you are able to see the blue zone. Then you are able to see the almost colorless zone, followed by the bright yellow zone, and finally we have the thin outer pale blue zone. Now, let's begin by discussing each of these zones and what makes it have that specific color. And we start with the blue zone. Looking at the position of the blue zone on that diagram, it is at the bottom of the flame. And at the bottom of the flame, the air rises rapidly and mixes with burning gas, and this makes the burning almost complete. And when the burning is complete, then we have the blue zone produced. Then we move on to the almost colorless zone. This zone, it consists mainly of unburned gases found at the middle of the flame and consists of unburned gases. Then we have the luminous bright yellow zone, or we just call it the bright yellow zone. This zone consists mainly of unburned tiny particles of hot glowing carbon, which gives out light. So the yellow color is as a result of the light produced by these unburned, glowing, solid carbon particles. The reason why they are unburned is because the air supply in the bright yellow zone is limited, and therefore there is incomplete combustion of the gas. Finally, we move on to the thin outer pale blue zone. This zone consists of gas which mixes with plenty of air and it burns completely. The laboratory gas mixes with plenty of air and there is complete combustion, and therefore the blue zone, the pale blue zone. But something to note about this pale blue zone is that it is very difficult to see it. When you're looking at a luminous flame, you may not be able to see the pale blue zone, but just know that it is there. And let's move on to the non-luminous flame. The non-luminous flame has three zones, namely the almost colorless zone, which consists of unburned gases. The almost colorless zone, which consists of unburned gases, just like in the luminous flame. Then we also have the green-blue zone, which contains partially burned gases due to insufficient supply of air. You see, the green-blue zone is found somewhere in the middle of the flame. So at that point, there is no much air and therefore burning is not complete. So though it is taking place, but it is partial. The burning is partial, hence the production of the green-blue zone. Then we have the outer pale blue zone, which in that case the gases burn completely because there is plenty of air. And I believe you can be able to see the location of the pale blue zone. Out there it is in contact with air, and therefore complete combustion leads to the production of the pale blue zone. The non-luminous flame gives out only a little light because it contains fewer carbon particles. So, the fact that the air hole is open, there is sufficient supply of air, and therefore that flame, in that particular flame, that is non-luminous flame, there is complete burning, apart from in the middle where we have some partial burning, and producing the green-blue zone. So very little light is produced, and therefore it is generally blue in color. So I would like you to watch a short video here on the two flames produced by the Bunsen burner.
Hi folks, in this video we're going to be taking a closer look at the Bunsen burner. It's the one piece of equipment that kids are keen to use when they start learning science in high school, and as a teacher it's something that we want them to learn to use safely. So here's the Bunsen burner sitting with its base on a heat-proof mat. This part is known as the chimney, this is the air hole, And this is the rubber tubing that connects the Bunsen burner to the gas tap. To light the Bunsen burner, we should first close the air hole completely. We can then turn on the gas tap, light a match and hold it at arm's length above the top of the Bunsen. You should also be standing up with long hair tied back and any flammable materials placed well out of the way. Now you'll see that when I open up the air hole, we get a very different flame. It changes from yellow to blue. Let's look at the two different types of flame in more detail then. So you can see that there are some pretty obvious differences as far as the colour and shape of the flame goes. With the air hole closed, the flame is yellow in colour, has an irregular shape and is a good bit higher. When the air hole is opened, the flame is far more regular in shape, with an outer cone, which is difficult to see here, and a triangular inner cone. For obvious reasons, we call this the blue flame. And what do the flames sound like? First off, this is the yellow flame. Pretty quiet then. Next up, the blue flame. This is why the blue flame is often referred to as the roaring blue flame. The next thing I'm going to do is to place a wire gauze into the flames to find out how hot they are. It doesn't take very long before the gauze in the blue flame is glowing red hot, so we can see that this is by far the hotter flame. You can open up the air hole by turning something called the collar, and this allows more oxygen to mix with the gas, which results in complete combustion of the gas, and therefore more heat. The yellow flame is sometimes called the safety flame, but this is only because it's easier to see. It's still very hot, so you still have to be very careful with it. Finally, I'm going to place a piece of white tile into both flames. When the air hole is closed, as it is with the yellow flame, the gas only mixes with the air at the top of the chimney, and there isn't enough oxygen for complete combustion to take place. Because of this, carbon soot is produced, and you can see this forming in the tile on the left. If you tried to heat a beaker of water on a tripod above a Bunsen burner on a yellow flame, you'd find that the beaker quickly turns black with soot as well. So hopefully this has given you a better understanding of how Bunsen burners work. If you're a pupil in school using the Bunsen, then remember to also follow any additional safety rules your teacher might have for lighting them and using them safely in the lab. Talking of safety, make sure to look out for my video on science safety rules, which is part of the same series. Until next time, see you later.
Now, let's look at the differences between the luminous and the non-luminous flame. The first difference, the luminous flame burns quietly, while the non-luminous flame burns with a roaring sound. Another difference, the luminous flame produces soot, while the non-luminous flame does not produce soot. Now, this soot produced in the luminous flame is as a result of the unburned, glowing, solid carbon particles. So those ones, because of not having complete combustion, they produce that smoke, and the smoke is what constitutes the soot, while the non-luminous flame doesn't have such. And that is the reason, one of the reasons why we do not use the luminous flame in the laboratory for heating, because the presence of soot will dirtify the apparatus and we may not be able to achieve our results as expected. Now, another difference is that the luminous flame is fairly hot while the non-luminous flame is very hot. Another reason why the non-luminous flame is preferred for heating in the laboratory, it's very hot. So, whatever is being heated will be hot faster. It will take a short time to heat a substance as compared to the luminous flame. Then we have the The luminous flame is large and wavy. We talked about that. While the non-luminous flame is short and steady. Short and steady. Finally, the luminous flame is yellow in color. Generally, you'll see it looking yellow, while the non-luminous flame is blue in color. Those are some of the differences between the luminous and the non-luminous flame. Now let's look at some past KCSE questions under this particular subtopic. Now question number 1. Explain how the hotness of a Bunsen burner flame can be increased. Now in this question, you need first to know the hottest flame of the Bunsen burner is the non-luminous flame. It is the hottest flame. Therefore, under what conditions is the non-luminous flame produced? When the air hole of the Bunsen burner is open. Therefore, the answer here is by keeping the air hole open. You can increase the hotness of a Bunsen burner by keeping the air hole open, because that's when you produce the hottest flame, which is the non-luminous flame. Question number 2. Explain why it is important to put off the non-luminous flame after use. And here we talked about the non-luminous flame producing very little light. So that makes it invisible. You may not be able to see it. So the reason why we put it off after use is to prevent accidents. And you need to explain that it produces less light, hence it's not easily visible, and therefore it can cause accidents. It is not in use, it should be put off to prevent accidents. Then question number 3. The diagram below shows a luminous flame. Name the parts labeled C and D. Now look at our luminous flame. Look at our flame. Actually, you might think it's an unluminous flame because it's showing only 3 zones. But because the question specifies that it's a luminous flame, this is how we look at it. Remember, I just told you that the outer pale blue zone is normally invisible. So you assume it is not shown in this particular diagram. Then you know part C is the almost colorless zone, which consists of unburnt gases, while part D is the bright yellow zone. The bright yellow zone. Yeah, so that is how you look at it. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed the lesson, and keep following me for many more lessons, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Let's continue in the next lesson.